Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Having Coffee with John Mack. It has been a couple of weeks because we had just recently, 2 weeks ago, released our welcome back video where we had taken some time off because my wife had to focus on completing her college education.
And Steven's
ankles. Our son broke both his ankles on a sledding trip. And then we missed last week because the Saturday before Memorial Day, my wife lost her grandfather, Rick, aka Pop.
And some people think grandfather. They think, 80, 90. No, this man was 65, barely made it to senior citizen age.
Yeah. He was still pretty young considering.
Yeah.
So it's been a tough couple of weeks for us trying to get through and help her grandmother through the situation. Our son, Steven, had a really difficult time. My wife had a really difficult time. It's a very hard time for everybody. Which
he was, like I've said before, he was our inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
We have a big family, but we have the inner circle. That inner circle does life together.
Yeah.
And he did life with us.
Mm-hmm.
Every day.
And he was basically like a father to you. I mean, you've got your father, but he was more than a grandfather. He was just like a father.
Yeah, he was 32 when I was born, so very young.
Very good guy. One of the best. One of the type of people that would literally give you the shirt off his back if he thought you needed it.
And plus more.
Ask
what else you need.
Just a really good guy. Which brings me into the point of this podcast is just talking about dealing with loss. Like when you lose somebody that close to you or your family, it affects you like very much, very deeply. It's a type of pain that is undescribable, really. And it's a pain that I've personally experienced a few times in my life. I actually lost my father 20 years ago. I lost my youngest brother 16 years ago. I've lost pretty much all of my grandparents except for one grandmother that is left, my grandma Phyllis. Lost numerous military friends, my Uncle Stephen. Death has just been around me for a long time. My mother lost 2 husbands, not just my father, but they had gotten divorced and she'd remarried and to a man named Bert who died really young, in his 20s, I believe. Had heart issues. So that's my sister's dad, and then my mom and dad got remarried years after that, and then he died of cancer. So death is always around us, and it's right around the corner. It's something we don't like to think about, but it is always there. So, I mean, loss is just always around us. It's part of life. It's something that we all have to deal with at some point in our lives, and it usually doesn't take very long before we are affected by the loss of someone that we love. It's sad, but one good thing that comes out of that is seeing how people come together. It kind of gives you a renewed faith in humanity when you see so many people offering to help, offering to do whatever they can as this train comes through. Man, it's loud today. To try to help. We had a neighbor who, her kids have basically become like a second group of kids for us too. I mean, it's like one of those situations. I see them playing out there, and if anybody messed with them, I would be out there protecting them just like I would my own kids. They're not my kids, obviously, but you know, you feel that community with certain neighbors and things. And this woman, the day of the celebration of life, came over and basically stayed the whole time. I think she left there for about an hour at the end, and then we came upstairs and we were kind of talking and relaxing after everyone had left, because the celebration of life was at our home. And we start hearing cups and things downstairs, and I thought maybe it was just the kids messing with the cups. And then we come downstairs only to find out that she had come over and basically cleaned the whole downstairs. Like, had everything straightened up, almost all completely done. For the most part it was. I mean, there was a couple little things that we had to do, but you know, it was just nice to be able to go through the day doing the celebration of life, having everyone here, which was really great for your grandmother to have. So many people show up and tell stories, because that's one of the things that she was worried about, is like not many people would come, or there'd only be a few, or a little trickle of people coming through. But it was literally nobody was here, and then the place filled up. We had people all over the place
before it was even scheduled to start.
Yes, that is true.
And they stayed long after it was supposed to end. I mean,
yeah,
packed to the brim,
telling stories. We had pictures all over the living room.
'Cause Pop said he wanted a party.
He wanted a party. He didn't want people crying over his body. So he wanted a cremation, no showing, no funeral, none of that.
So he got a party.
Cremation and then a party. So that's what we did. And it was good. It was really good to see some family that you hadn't seen in a long time. And then dealing with the loss together. Like, everyone had their stories of Pop, things that they had done during his life and their time together, and just sharing memories of different things, which is really important. Now, rewind back to the beginning when everything was discovered that he had passed. That was a very tragic day, especially for my wife, because she had to call hospitals. Nobody had called the family. So he suffered a heart attack at work, called the ambulance. They arrived on the scene. There was a man had come into his place of employment, asked him if he was okay, said his eyes were rolling back in his head. He said he was okay, but the man took him to the restroom and splashed water onto his face, which kind of revived him a little bit. Then the ambulance shows up. They get him to a gurney. He walks over to the gurney, sits down, and they take him away. His boss shows up as they're wheeling him out, and he gives his boss the thumbs up and says, "I'll be okay. I'll be back." Of course, he wasn't. He ended up having what we suspect was either a massive heart attack or maybe a embolism or stroke or something. We don't have the autopsy information.
The doctor said she suspects massive heart attack.
Suspected a massive heart attack. Now, nobody called the family, which is tragic, in my opinion, in itself, that your loved one could be away, have something like this happen, and nobody contacts you. And I think that was really difficult, I know for me, to kind of comprehend, like, how this could happen. Now, I understand his boss, because his boss says that, his application with all of his information was at a different location. It wasn't at the place where he was at. So he didn't have any numbers to call. The only way we found out was because my wife's uncle showed up over there to look for his dad. And the boss told him that he was taken by ambulance to the hospital, which he then calls your grandmother, who calls my wife, who then has to call hospitals. Calls the closest hospital. They say he's not there. She calls the next closest hospital. They say he's...
Just doing that's a horrible experience.
Yeah, when you have to call
where someone you love is...
Yes. That is...
I like my heart sank.
Yeah. Yeah. And I already had a bad feeling because the way it sounded, like when we first found out that he had gone to the hospital, like, was that he'd been at the hospital for at least an hour. And that was unnerving to me, that if he was at a hospital for an hour and we hadn't heard anything and his wife hadn't heard anything, that's not good. So my wife calls the next closest hospital. They say, yes, he's here, which sounded great. She transfers you to the doctor, who informs my wife that they had been looking for the next of kin. And that was a big statement. We've been trying to find the next of kin.
It didn't click with me at the time.
No.
Like, they said that, and I was like, well, that's a weird way to state that, but I mean, like, in my head, for 34 years, Pop is young, he is lively, he's going to live to be 100. I wasn't worried. I thought, at the worst, because he'd had heart problems since birth.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, at the worst, he's going to have, like, an open heart surgery, he'll be fine, and we'll meet him at the hospital and get him through this. So, like, it didn't even register that next of kin, that it's not good to hear that. Because
that doesn't want to cross your mind. You just don't want your mind to go there. Now, of course, there was a little conversation going. Your uncle had showed up at the house while you were trying... I think you were on the phone with the hospital. Mm-hmm. They were transferring you to the doctor. I told him that you were calling hospitals, and I came in. I thought he was coming in with me, but he had walked back out to his car. So when the doctor got on the phone and was asking about next of kin and everything and wanted everyone on speakerphone, he had already left. So it was just my wife, and the doctor basically said, I shouldn't do this over the phone, but he is here and he has passed. And I had never seen anyone devastated as badly as that, like up close, before. Like when my brother died, my mother was devastated. But it had been a few days and she had been through the tears, and it was kind of like one of those things where she had kind of just slipped into a depression. She didn't really have an outburst. We went in, we kissed him before they took him off the life support and took him to, because he was an organ donor, so they were going to harvest organs. But she took it really hard and a little more quiet for a long time, and still is. I mean, she decorates his headstone for all the holidays every year for 16 years now. She goes out there, decorates new flowers, decorates for Halloween, 4th of July, Memorial Day, everything. I mean, Christmas, it's just what she does. And it's part of her coping. My wife yelled at the doctor, said, no, you're wrong, no, 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 no. And then collapsed on the stairs and basically fell down the stairs on her back. So she just kind of slid down the stairs, screaming at the top of her lungs. And I had to kind of wrap her up and get the phone and get the information from the doctor about what we needed to do, where we could go to see him. And I had to give your grandmother's number to the doctor, and then I called your mother after I got a phone with the doctor. When we went up to the hospital to say our goodbyes there, we went in to see him, and you could tell that, he just wasn't there. It was obvious. You get that sense. Like when the spirit has left the body and there's a shell remaining, and that was kind of the same feeling that you got then. The torment, though, and part of the podcast that I really wanted to touch on, going through all this grief, all the stuff that went into this, was all the questions after. And I know my wife is a very religious person, has a deep love of Christ, is probably one of the most devout people that I know when it comes to the Lord. But she was very, very worried about where he was. Not his body, but his soul. Like, where did he go? Where is he? Because the only thing that kept going through her mind was that he was lost. And I think that that's something that a lot of people worry about. When somebody they love passes on from this life to the next, where are they? Where do they go? Are they in the good place or the bad. Now, the one thing I kept telling you was God judges our hearts. And Rick had the best heart. He had a heart of gold. He was born with a defective physical heart, but his heart, the love he had for the people around him and people less fortunate, even though he really had nothing when you think about it, financially wise. He had very, very little. But he would give what little he had to help anyone at any time. And that's what Christ tells us.
And I was telling Mom also, we just had that discussion this morning, that he's the only person thus far that's passed away that I have ever known where you didn't have to question how he felt about you, because he let everyone know exactly how he felt about them. He wore his heart on his sleeve. He showed that love.
Yes.
He not just showed it, but he put it on display at all times. You never had to question if he loved you because you knew. And he said it and he showed it, and it was just unquestionable.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think that is something that we all need to reflect on. Like, do we show the people that we love every day what they mean to us? And if not every day, then, as often as possible, hey, you are important to me. You are a special person in my life. I mean, I've got people that I have in my life that I consider to be very special people to me. And I hope that they know who they are. But at the same time, are you ever really sure? Because with Pop, one of the things that was obvious was like, he loved my wife, he loved my kids, he loved his wife, his son, his daughter, his son-in-law, everyone around him, including me. He loved, and he would do anything for them.
And for example, Stephen, I went to him. I mean, they were fishing buddies from the time Stephen came out of the womb anyway.
Yeah.
But Stephen exceptionally got the fishing fever this year. He was stuck in those splints for 3 months, wheelchair bound. And when he could get out, he wanted to go fishing. Whether it was cold or rainy, it didn't matter. And he drove me crazy about fishing. And I told Pop, I said, this kid's driving me like insane about fishing. I'm not taking him fishing in rainy, 60-degree weather. He takes him fishing. Not one weekend, but every single weekend. He took him fishing. For hours, like all day, all Sunday, they went fishing.
Yeah. And they were really super close. And you can tell that Pop meant a lot to him, and he meant a lot to Pop. And like I was saying, like, people, do they really know how important they are to you? Like, I think that you know how important you are to me and the kids. But, like, there's other people out there that I don't know how they really feel. You know what I mean? Like, my mom is super important to me, but does she really know it?
Right.
Mike, my stepfather, is super important to me. Does he know it?
Yeah. And I know what you're talking about, because I was also talking to Mama about that. I said, I know beyond doubt that he loved me. But did he know that I loved him?
Yeah, and that's what you're left with.
That's what you're left with, and that's really kind of what kills you. And that's why I told you, I said, after this, I think the only thing left to do to make sure this doesn't happen again is to pour every ounce of yourself into the people that you love. Like, until there's nothing left, You know, you give until it hurts because then you know that they'll know.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast tonight over this specific situation as a dedication to Pop and to kind of bring out those feelings and touch on something that we all are going to experience. This isn't an exclusive group. Everybody loses people, and everybody deals with different aspects of that. And some people are really hard on themselves, or they just are unsure on the relationship. That person may have meant a lot to them, and they feel that pain, but they don't feel like they're deserving of feeling that pain because they weren't as close as somebody else. And it's like, it's not always about that. If somebody was close to you or meant a lot to you, then you have every right to grieve.
And like Matt said, grief actually isn't terrible because it kind of shows like the more that you hurt, the more the pain is unimaginable, the more you love that person.
Yeah, the closer they were to you.
Yeah, and I thought that too, like, what if I just didn't love anyone? It'd be so much easier. But then you'd have to trade all those precious moments, all those wonderful, beautiful moments that make life worth it, and it's almost worth going through that unimaginable pain to know that you had those experiences with amazing people, because these people they were never on this earth and they will never be on this earth again.
Exactly.
But you had the privilege to be with that person.
And what a life without those memories and those special moments and those things that make you hurt so much really be worth living if you didn't have those experiences. I don't think it would. Life would be so dull, you'd just be
why
bored.
Even be here?
Like, why even live? I mean, I know the pain is excruciating in the loss, but all the memories and the joy that you had throughout life, you can't just discount that.
And sometimes those memories are hard and they'll hit you in weird places. Like I was telling you yesterday, I was in the middle of the street and, it was the highway and I was stuck at a red light and I end up in front of the place that he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had a flood of memories of me and him. And I was dead to anything else around me. It was just my mind was consumed with that. And the light turned green at some point, and there I am sitting still in the middle of the highway with people honking at me because I was completely somewhere different. I think that's another thing is like you have to be careful about how you treat other people when they're acting differently or doing something strange because you don't know what they've recently gone through.
Yeah, we tend to get wrapped up in our own lives and our own importance, and we don't take the time to recognize when people around us are suffering. Even though, in a car, you can't really see the other person, and you, like I said, when I told you, typically when people are at a red light in their car and they're not going, they're probably on their phone. So people just automatically assume you're texting and not paying attention to the green light. So they're trying to alert you to, hey, the light's green, you need to go.
I was physically staring at that green light, but I didn't see it.
Just zoned out. Yeah, there's just like little things that hit you, that that cross your mind. And it's weird. One of the things that crossed my mind, I haven't even told you, is like during that whole chain of events from where they picked him up to where the hospital that he went to, he had to pass through where he lived, through our town, which he could have been right out here in front of our neighborhood.
And we hear sirens go by all the time.
Yeah.
We probably did that morning and just
we probably
didn't
did
even realize.
and didn't even notice. I was getting ready to paint our bathroom and
I was uploading a video.
Uploading a video, yeah. And were completely unaware of what was going on and how much our life was about to change with one phone call.
And that's what's so strange is like you wake up and you fix your coffee and you laugh and have conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, all it takes is the ring of a phone to completely shatter everything you thought you ever knew about the world. Completely shatter your world.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing's the same. Nothing's perceived the same. Like we're trying to rebuild everything around this absence that is so very there and very prevalent.
Yeah, and it's a eye-opener every time it happens. Like I said, with how many people that have been close to me that have died or passed on, or however you want to say it, you always think, I need to build my foundation with something more certain. And then you build on people again. But really, when you think about it, the only sure foundation that you can build your life on is Christ.
Yeah.
He's forever.
Yeah.
But
People
it's hard
perishable.
because, Pop's here. So you build this whole nice foundation with him because he's tangible. He's here, and you can talk and share coffee and have all these moments with. And we talk about all the time about how great it would be to have been alive during the time of Jesus and been able to be at the table with him breaking bread and hear him talk.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I had told you when we found out everything, because you were really taking it hard. And I was telling you, he is at the table now. Like where we were just talking just a few days before, where we wished we could be, he's there now, breaking bread, talking one-on-one with Jesus. I said, it's pretty amazing. It's hard to find comfort in that when the wound is so fresh.
Yeah.
But over time, it is a comfort to realize, they may not be here with me, but they're with the Lord. And when my time comes, I hope that I can be there with them, with the Lord. So
And I think that's been my biggest strength right now is God.
Mm-hmm.
The first week, the only thing I could really do was like my feet felt so heavy, like it hurt to put one in front of the other.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I could really do was just pray for strength. Like, just help me take one more step. Help me take one more breath. And that's all I prayed.
Yeah.
And but the past few days I've been able to get back into my Bible study.
Mm-hmm.
And it's brought a lot of comfort just hearing his promises over and over. Not just the promises of like what's to come after this, but how he sustains us in the pain and in the suffering, because he's been there before. He's felt what we have felt.
Yes, he has.
He has stood here in this moment. And I think that's just like that foundation in him is what's truly helped. And that's what I told you. I said it's so weird because it's like a kind of chain reaction. A year ago I ended up with, horrible back pain. And it drew me closer to God. And I'm like, I'm thankful for that because I've lost someone so important to me. And if I had not drawn closer to God during that time, then I don't know how I would be. I would be reacting much differently now than if I didn't have that strong relationship with Jesus.
And you had a talk, was it like 2 days later, with your dad?
It was the day after.
And you asked him how he'd, because your dad's father, your grandfather on your dad's side, has also passed away years ago.
Pop was my last grandfather.
And you asked your dad how he dealt with that.
Yeah.
And he told you.
He said that the first week with, getting everything sorted, celebration of life and everything is the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
But that it gets a little bit easier, that you never stop grieving. The grieving just looks differently throughout your life. So like the initial tears will slow, but you'll still find yourself crying here and there. And in the middle of all that crying, you're still grieving what had happened and what can never happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that what helps him is to remember that this life is a race. And like Paul said, I have finished the race, I have fought the good fight. And so he said it's nice to picture it as a race, and then when you get to that finish line, you have all of heaven cheering you on to continue to keep going. And like, even not just the finish line, but in the midst of the race, you're being watched, you're being cheered on, and the people in heaven are also those who you've lost. So like Pop's up there, cheering us on to keep going. And I think that helps not just when you reach the end of your life, but also during the most difficult times.
Yep.
Because you know that you have heaven at your back.
Yep.
And like Matt was saying, you are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses that have preceded us. And we're just more witnesses that are in that family, that are adding to the story. And it will continue on and on. I think it helps greatly. I imagine that finish line and heaven cheering me on.
Yep.
With Pop right there.
Exactly. And I thought that was a powerful message, because I was sitting here when you were talking to your dad, and it was a very emotional conversation. You had him in tears, which I've never really seen him cry, but he was.
I just told him, like, I can't lose you.
Mm-hmm.
Because the weirdest thing is when I found out about Pop, the only thing I felt was fear. And I didn't know that grief was fear.
Yeah.
But I was the most scared I'd ever been in my entire life.
Well, because Pop was one of those guys who was a security blanket for you, for one. Mainly emotionally, financially, and protective. He was very protective of you. So you always had him. And as a kid growing up, people like that are always indestructible to you. I know that's how I felt about my dad, about my grandfather, Jimmy. I never thought that he would go, and he did. You start realizing that everyone is mortal. Everybody has an expiration date that we can't see. It's not like picking up a milk carton and you can see a date printed on it.
Yeah.
But at some time.
It kind of reminds me of that movie we seen that one time. I don't remember what it was. But remember, that girl had the ability to see the numbers of days counting down above everyone's head.
Yeah.
I forgot what that was.
I can't remember either.
But that's
I know they made one called like Out of Time. Remember that, where they had they had
That
to
may have-
work for time,
Yeah.
and they had like a little, I think it was like a watch or tattoo thing or something that they had to recharge with time.
Yeah. I remember that.
So yeah,
I can't remember if that was that.
it's like would that be better if you had a little thing you could see it and you knew when you were getting down to your last minutes, or just make it a surprise? I prefer to not know.
Yeah. Because, like, it's kind of like the dying slowly kind
Mhm.
of thing, you know, like people who
Peeper.
are like cancer patients, you know, the first thing that they ask from what I heard is, how much time do I have?
Yeah.
But then you're counting down.
Yeah. I
But
don't.
also, it's so scary to think that you wake up one day and snap of the finger.
Yeah, I mean, both ways are scary, but I think if I had to choose the way that I was going to depart this world, it would be quick. I wouldn't want to sit there and just let everybody see me suffer
Yeah.
for weeks or months or years. Because some people, you know, they fight cancer and they fought it for 5 years and then they slowly start deteriorating and they waste away to nothing. And that's terrible.
And that's what our friend said too.
Yeah.
You know that she's a nurse that deals with a lot of that stuff daily, and
Mm-hmm.
she said it's the best way because you feel nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
You just go. No. And like Matt, our pastor or minister, was saying, like, you know, some people go through that and they have months to say goodbye, and they take it a little easier when it's over versus people who it's sudden. But at the same time, it's kind of selfish to want somebody to
Yeah.
go through all that suffering. Like, they don't get to choose, obviously,
Right.
but like if somebody like Pop had a heart attack and they brought him back, but he's going to be a vegetable, but he might live 6 months longer, but he can't do anything but blink.
He'd hate that.
That would be horrible for him. Like, you get 6 more months with him, but you don't
Yeah.
at the same time.
And
So-
he was poor man. He was hurting.
He was hurting bad feet pain, hips
Migraines,
popping out, migraines
chronic-
every night,
chronic debilitating
back
migraines.
pain was horrible.
And he had a very, very large hernia
Yeah. So he was going through the ringer.
from head to toe, literally.
He was exhausted. All the time. He was tired.
I was always looking for
Different things to help
something
pick him
new
up.
to help, like some type of cream or some type
Yeah.
of. I was really careful about what to get him though after the Excedrin incident.
Yeah.
But-
Don't give people who have had heart surgery Excedrin, because it's evidently really bad for your blood pressure and your heart. So if you've had a stent put in, don't take Excedrin.
Yeah. Fair warning, and that's something that we actually heard from the doctor. Because
Yeah.
I gave him Excedrin one time because he had a headache and it did not fare well.
No. So, aspirin, okay. Excedrin, no go. So, like I said, I wanted to do this episode kind of talking about Rick and the things that he did with his life and what he meant to people. But the man meant many things to many people. He was a husband, he was a father, a grandfather, a best friend, a brother, an uncle. He was just someone you could always depend on. He was very dependable.
And he didn't even try to make friends, but he had
But he never
so
met a
many.
stranger.
Everyone loved him, and he didn't even try.
He would talk to everyone,
Yeah.
but then he'd say he didn't like people. But
But people liked
everywhere we
him.
went, he would just chat somebody's ear off.
Yeah.
So he was just that kind of a guy.
I
Very
think it's also
special.
probably important to say as well that you shouldn't feel bad when the tears slow,
No.
because that's the initial shock, you know. But then you're constantly grieving. I have found,
Mm-hmm.
but it changes
Yeah.
and just kind of morphs into different ways. You know, a day later, 2 days later, a week later, 2 weeks later, from what I understand, a year later, you know, in years later.
10, 20 years later.
Yeah, and that was something that our pastor had talked about, how, like, you never stop
Mm-hmm.
grieving. It just changes the way that it looks.
Yeah, and I think that's really true. I know one thing that we'd always talked about when back in the military days, my military days, was when we started losing people from my unit or people that we had known. Was we need to live our lives for them because they're gone. They can't experience life. So we need to continue and live and do the things that they can no longer do. So, for instance, with Pop being a fisherman and always taking our son fishing and stuff like that, I've been taking him fishing. Been doing a lot more fishing lately,
Yeah.
which I like to fish. I just haven't really had a whole lot of time to do much fishing for a while.
Yeah.
But I've been trying to make time. We're planning on doing more camping. We're going to do more family things and just try to enjoy life. Because I don't think that when people pass away, they want us to stop living. But it's hard because people
Pop.
feel such grief.
Yeah, it is.
And then they
Yeah.
feel almost guilty
guilty for living.
for living.
And I've already felt that just a week and
Yeah.
and a half in. I've already felt that. Just going back to work.
Yeah.
Or eat something as simple as like eating, having a cup of coffee. Survivor's guilt's for real. It really is a real.
Yes, it
battle.
is. It is a real thing, and people go through it daily. And some people suffer with it for years and years after the loss. But you got to look at, like I said, do you really believe that they'd want you to just stop living because they are no longer here?
Well, Pop literally said when he was alive to not do that.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that's kind of keeping me in check is I have to remind myself that he would not, he said he would not want that. That's why one of the reasons he didn't want a show, he didn't want a funeral, like he wanted a party, like he wanted people to celebrate and to live and to laugh. He told Mama, he's like, no crying. No crying. Which is...
It's a big ask.
It's a big ask. It's impossible. So sorry to let you down, Pop, but, we're trying to...
Gonna have some tears when that loss is there, but... And it's part of it. Even though you know that they would want you to continue and to keep doing the things that you enjoyed in life and that they enjoyed hearing about you doing in life, you still feel guilty and you still feel like I shouldn't smile, I shouldn't laugh anymore, I shouldn't enjoy this ice cream, or I shouldn't enjoy this food because it was their favorite and I shouldn't like it anymore. And it's like, no. You can't be like that.
I'm
enjoy
still
the things.
With the rhubarb pie.
Yeah,
because
strawberry rhubarb pie.
It was kind of our thing. We're the only ones who liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd bake strawberry rhubarb pie or strawberry rhubarb custard. And I would just send him whole things of it, or we'd split it, have some together with a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to make another strawberry rhubarb anything again, not yet.
It'll take time.
And then the Belvitas.
Yeah.
struggling with that, which I'm missing him because it used to be the bulk of my breakfast, but it takes time.
Yeah, and that's the key. I mean, they say time heals all things,
I don't think it does.
but I think it does, but you're still left with that scar.
Right. Like, you start to learn to adjust your life to that ever-present absence,
Mm-hmm.
which I still haven't quite figured out yet. But
Yeah.
I hear that it's there.
It's there somewhere.
Um,
Just like today, I'm going to take...
But it doesn't heal wounds.
I can't remember what it
Time
was.
does not heal wounds.
You were like, I'm going to take the rest of this over to mom and pop.
Mom and pop, yeah.
And then you stop yourself and you're like, to mom. And it's like, it's okay to still say mom and pop, I think. Because that was it. They were like one, and she's suffering.
I
bad.
told her too. I said, like, I won't pretend that I know what you're going through, because if I feel a pain that I have never felt before as the granddaughter, I cannot imagine what she's going through as the wife.
Mm-hmm.
When you've built a life for 43 years with this man and loved him every day and every night. Her world revolved around him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a huge loss. So, it's an adjustment. You're going to have to, everyone has to adjust to a new life, basically, because somebody that you would depend on, like if we needed somebody to watch the kids because you needed to go do something, and you'd call Pop and he'd be right over here.
I was actually about
to
do
do that.
that last week.
They lived 5 minutes down the road, so it was so convenient just to call him, and he was so dependable that he would always be there if at all possible.
I wouldn't have made it through college without that man.
No.
I would have had to quit year one.
And like I said, it's God's timing, because you just graduated.
And a week later he died. Exactly a week.
Exactly a week later he passes. He died on Saturday before Memorial Day. But Sunday, he was supposed to be fishing with our son on a boat in the middle of a lake.
One more day, that would have been tragic.
It would have been our son on a boat with him.
Even more tragic than it was.
On a fishing trip, watching his grandfather die of a heart attack. It would have been very, very bad.
He wouldn't have come back from that.
No, he wouldn't. So God's timing is perfect. And we need to remember that God has a plan. We don't know what it is. We don't know why he does the things that he does, but we can't see the grand picture. We've talked about this before on our podcast. God has this picture, and it is this masterpiece, and it is beautiful and perfect. And everything that happens, every little stroke of the brush that he makes, adds to that picture. But all we can see is that little bitty, teeny weeny pixel that's right around us. So something like this happens. We don't know why. We struggle to accept it. Some of us at times blame God for the loss and get angry with him for taking someone so important to us away. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, that we're all part of his grand plan, his masterpiece picture that he is painting, and it is not up to us to decide the strokes. It's not up to us to decide the outcome. We just need to live, and we need to praise him and his glory and accept that we aren't in control. The world doesn't revolve around us. Life does not revolve around us. And every day that we're here is a gift. And every day that the people around us that we love are here is a gift as well. Because we don't know when our last breath will be. We hope that it's a long, long time from now, but the reality of the situation is it could be tomorrow or the day after. We have no idea. That's kind of a sombering thought, but it's true.
I think that it just goes back to Job, where he had lost every single person he loved. His wife had turned on him and said, "Why don't you just curse God? Look what he did to you."
Mm-hmm.
And he lost all of his land, all of his cattle, and he still said,
Boils all over him.
boils all over him, his health failed.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was stripped from him. And he still said, "The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord."
Mm-hmm.
And he told his wife, he said, "How can you praise God when he gives, but hate him when he takes? Because he's still the same God."
Yeah. God is God is God.
I don't know. And like, there was this thing I was reading one time, and it was like, maybe we are the ones that take away our own joy because we have expectations, even if we don't even realize it. And in this pain, I have no joy. And I'm like, well, what were my expectations? And if I'm to be realistic with myself, I expected him to live to be 100.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect this. I had expectations, even though they were unrealized and unspoken. And I think that we just have to remember that we dictate our joy, because we have to find that in God and realize that we shouldn't have expectations, because that's another little minor way that we try to control our life.
Yeah.
And we have zero control.
Exactly. Like I was saying, like, the time is irrelevant. Like, if you had 35 more years with him, it wouldn't make the loss any less painful. It'd probably make it more painful. So when somebody matters to you and means a lot to you in your life, even if it's a week, you're going to feel that pain. But it gets deeper the longer you spend with that person. The more memories and joy that you've shared with that person, the deeper the pain is when you lose them. So, I mean, it's a difficult situation. Like I told you that one day, I said, you know, like, if Jesus came to you today and said, "I will give you your pop back for one more day," but he's going to die at the end of that day, it's like the selfish side would say, "Yeah, give me that one more day." But it doesn't help, because you're still going to feel that pain in the end. You're still going to have that loss.
And he's going to suffer twice.
You get that one more day, but then you got to feel that pain again.
Yeah.
So it's tough, because life is so fragile. It's very delicate, and we take it for granted. We're all guilty of it. We take it for granted. We always think we got one more day. We got another week. We got another month. We got a year. But we really don't know. And I mean, I got family that doesn't even speak to each other for really stupid reasons. Silly competitive issues or whatever. I don't even really know the whole story anymore, but I have an aunt that will not talk to any of the family, basically, because of whatever reason. But I think if someone in the family, in my family, was to pass, and she lost these years over some little grudge,
Yeah.
she's going to regret that, and it's going to make that
Yeah.
a little harder for her to take, I would think.
So I was actually thinking about that, a few days ago, that with how much time I spent with Pop, how often we talked. He was over here often, at least twice a week, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
Breakfast, lunches, dinners, coffees, and I still have regret thinking, did he know how much I love him? Did he know? And I can only imagine how somebody would feel if something happened and you've went years without talking to this person because of a petty grudge.
Yeah, and I mean, that's how I feel. Like I said, with my family, my mom, my brother that I have left, and my sister, stepdad, stepsister, which I just call sister. My Uncle Donnie, who I hunt with, and him and I have been really close. My aunt, both my aunts, my grandmother, just all these people. And I mean, there's some people that you just kind of got to cut off in life, like my dad's sister, the only aunt on my dad's side, only member of my dad's side of the family that I even have any kind of contact with. But she doesn't like my political views and says I'm trash, and tries to say that it's okay that my son's depressed and borderline suicidal because teachers want to tell him he's an evil racist kid because he's a white male and he's inherently evil and racist, and he doesn't understand because he loves everyone and he doesn't have any bad feelings towards anybody, but his teacher wants to tell him that he does. And then my aunt tells me that hey, they're just trying to save democracy and I should just go with it. I'm like, okay, so it's okay if my son ends up killing himself because a teacher puts him into such a deep depression over how bad of a person he is for stuff that he didn't even do and had no control over, that was over 100 years ago. That's okay. And that's encouraged by her. So I've just decided to just cut her out. Like, people like that, you just can't get wrapped up in. I've not really ever been close to her. She's family. If I heard that she died tomorrow, I would be a little sad, but it's not going to be like heartbreaking to me because she's let it be known that it wouldn't be heartbreaking to her if something happened to me. So actually, I think she probably prays for that every night. But and it doesn't even have to be blood. Like, people that are not your blood can be your closest family, and I think people don't understand that. Yeah. Some people don't understand that. They think it's got to be blood. Blood's thicker than water. Not always. Like, sometimes it's people that aren't blood that become the closest to you and closest to your heart. So,
I mean, Victoria was there the day that it happened.
Victoria was right there. She was coming to give you a gift for graduation. You told me to call her and tell her not to come. And I called her and said, Jesse's in a dark place. She needs you if you want to come. And she said, if I can come, I would really like to come. And I said, please. And she was here like 2-3 minutes later.
Yeah.
And you guys just wrapped up in a big hug, and she cried and you cried, and it was good that you had that friend that could come in and you could just lean on at that time.
Yeah. I soaked her shirt.
Snotted
on it a little bit.
A little bit of snot, yeah. And she showed up for the celebration of life and was here for quite a while.
About 2 hours, I think.
So, that was really nice.
I had pictures taken with Mama.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was good. So, I mean, I know we're getting long on this, but I guess the overarching theme of everything is just appreciate the people around you. Realize that time is precious, memories are precious, and don't hesitate to let somebody know how much they mean to you. Don't hesitate to say, hey, I love you. Give somebody a hug. Go do something together.
And I would say, serve. We were put here to love and to serve.
Yeah.
And just give every ounce of yourself to the people who matter the most to you. Because I think it's the only way that when it's all said and done, you know that you've done it all.
Mm-hmm.
You've given your best. And you leave little room for regret. And money and things don't matter.
No.
And you don't realize until after, I came home and I hated everything I had.
Mm-hmm.
And, none of that matters at all. If you can give financially, give. If you can give an item that, somebody else doesn't have and needs, give. If somebody needs something to take away some of their pain somehow, Pop, he needed some of those insoles for his shoes. If that's to your ability, then do it, because it's the only way that you can love and serve, is to take and put them first. And 'cause we're all selfish in a way, and you don't even realize it until something like this happens, how sickeningly just selfish that you can be and totally be unaware of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you touched on something really good there. A good point is live your life so where when your time's up, you don't have any regrets that you didn't show the people around you how much you love them. Because we always think when somebody passes, did they know that I love them? But I think it's more important for you when you go that the people that you love knows that you love them. And if they know that you love them, you kind of inherently get that reciprocation. You know who loves you. When you show them love and they show you love back, you know. Now, you might be people that you show love and they just are cold. And you're like, I don't know. But you still love them anyway. But that's on them. You know what I mean? That's not on you. So you show love to people.
And pay attention to who's in your life, because God put people there for a reason. Years ago, I didn't know why Victoria, why Victoria. But, we became the best of friends. And then, a couple years ago, we have another friend all of a sudden moved down the road, literally 2 houses down. Mm-hmm. And these people become important.
Yeah,
they become
very important. They kind of become ingrained into the family. They're not just friends. These are family. That we would do anything for them, and I just know or feel that they would do anything for us if we needed it. So, it's good. It's really good to have that around, and to have that love and that community. And that's what we need in life. Yeah. Like you talked about, would it be better to just go through this life not loving anything and just slipping through? But again, you'd have to lose out on all that community, having people that you could depend on, people that you could share with, and that would be a horrible life.
And without love and serving, I think that you would have missed the point.
Yeah.
You'd miss the point.
A life without love is not a life worth living.
Yeah.
So, I think we'll end it there as just a reminder for everyone to tell somebody that you love how you feel about them. Don't let a day go by or an opportunity slip past to let somebody know that they're important to you. To tell them, hey, you hold a special spot in my heart.
Don't be too busy watching a TV show to speak to someone who matters to you.
Yeah.
Thinking that they're going to be there the next day.
Yeah.
Don't.
And, somebody needs help. Don't hesitate. Don't say, oh, well, maybe somebody else will do it. Be that person that steps up to make a difference in somebody's life. We all got to realize that we are somebody's angel on a particular day. People don't like to think about it. They think about, angels in heaven. But we could be that instrument of God that makes a big difference in somebody's life now.
And somebody else can be your angel. And the Bible talks about, pay attention because you could be entertaining angels unawares.
Mm-hmm. So let's try to do that. Let's try to be angels to the people around us and try to make a big difference to people's lives, because that is the greatest reward I feel that we could have on this earth. And with that, I will say good night and God bless.